Hi, my name is Michael Nikolaev. I'm in charge of art production here at WorldViz. I'm going to show you how to export for Vizard using the OpenSeaGraph exporter. The exporter can be found in the download section of our website, worldviz.com. So now let's take a look at our model in 3ds Max. As you can see, I've removed the layers that were in the file previously, and I've replaced them with layers that are relevant to the file names they're going to be exporting to. You don't necessarily have to use layers. You can use groups or selection sets. It's really up to you. But I prefer using layers. So each of these layers will be exported separately as a separate file. And they'll be treated a little bit differently in the script, though most of this will be done automatically. So the layers are solid.ive, solidtrans.ive, which is for transparent, solidtextchange.ive, which is stuff that's going to have its texture change, and solidcol.ive, which is for collision. So now I'm going to export the first layer, solid.ive. This again is a layer that contains everything except transparent objects, objects where the textures are going to change, and the collision mesh. So I'm going to select that in the Layers palette, use this button to select all objects within that layer. Now I'm going to go to File, Export Selected, type in the name, sala.ive. Now when I click Save, a dialog is going to come up. This has a lot of options. You may want to pause this video for a moment to make yours match. The main thing to worry about in this case, since you're using complete maps, is to use DXT1 compression for anything that does not have transparency, such as stuff with the texture switches, or your collision mesh, or this layer. And that basically just says there's no alpha channel, compress this really, really well. If you do have an alpha channel, then you should be using DXT5, because that'll keep it. So we're going to use DXT1 and export. And this will just take a few seconds. So as you can see, first it's exporting the materials, then it exports the objects, and then it optimizes everything. Okay, so now we're going to export the next layer, solidtrans.ive. I'm going to select that again in the Layers palette. Use this button to select all objects in that layer. Here's a quick view of what all those objects are. Just anything that's transparent. So now, again, File, Export Selected, and I'll type the name, sala_trans.ive. It's important that you get these names correct. The solid.ive, solidtrans, and solidcol. The texture changing one, you can put whatever name you want. So for this one, like I said a minute ago, we use DXT5. That way we preserve the transparency of the textures. So this one is exporting pretty quick, and it's now running the file. Okay, so now we're going to export the third layer, which is the texture change one. And so there's a quick view of that. So this one we're actually going to be exporting twice, once for each texture. And we're going to give like a letter suffix at the end for each texture. The current version of the script that we're using does not support more than one set of objects using textures that can be switched. This will be added in later versions. So right now it's got one of the two textures. Let's go with the original. Okay, so file, export selected, and like I said, you can type in whatever you want. It can be like my object A, or you could use text change. I'm going to use text change. So say A underscore TEXCHANGE, and now I'm going to do 1 and underscore A for the first texture. And this one is DXT1 conversion. Okay, now back to the material editor, switch out to the second map, and export again. I'll click on this to grab the name, switch the A to a B for the second one, and use the same settings for the exporter, and we're good. Okay, so now finally we're going to export the collision mesh. So I'll hide everything, turn on, select it, do isolate selection to make sure I have everything I need, and now export selected. Again, the name on this one is important to get right, so it's ALA underscore COL.IVE. If you really want to use a different name, you can, but you'll have to change the corresponding name within the script. So DXT1 compression, though in this case it doesn't really matter because there's no textures and we're not going to see it anyways. The collision mesh, of course, is for collision, which tells you where you can go. Okay, so now we're ready to bring our files into Vizard. So let me go to that, which is conveniently located right behind my Max window. So if you look in your projects folder, whichever one you're working in, you will see all the export files. And so the main ones we need to worry about are the texture change ones. So we copy this from one and paste it in here. And then copy the other one and paste. Now you can actually have as many different ones as you want. In this case, I just did 2. If you want more, you would just add another comma and add another line. Let's say this one is text change 1C. If I run it now, it'll have an error because we don't actually have a text change 1C, so I'll delete that. And now, if you named all your other files correctly, the solid.ive, the solid trans, and the solid col, everything should work correctly, and you won't have to change anything else. So let's run that. It starts up, and in a few seconds, at least on mine, we are in the scene. So now, got the program set up, so if I hit tab, it'll switch between the 2 different floor textures that we just exported. So I can look around, look at different things. Everything looks all pretty. To conclude this tutorial, I'm going to go over quickly a few problems that you can look out for after you export. It's easier to look out for the problems after you export because that's when they're going to be really noticeable. They have a tendency to hide within Max. And some of them won't show up at all within Max until you do like a reset X form, such as is the case with when an object has been mirrored or negatively scaled. Even though it'll display correctly in max, the normals will actually be inverted, and that means the object will look inside out. You can get rid of this. Well, you don't actually have to put a reset X4 modifier on it to make it show correctly in Vizard, but if you do that without putting a reset X4 on that at first, it's going to look wrong in max. So I recommend using both a reset X4 and a normal modifier. Alternatively, you can go into the polygon layer, select everything, and do flip. That'll get you the same result as the normal modifier. Another problem you might come across in Vizard is that you'll start up your script, and in the output window you'll see triangle intersect repeated over and over and over again, scrolling by very, very fast. And this happens when you have an object without any polygons in it. This happens when someone means to delete an object, and instead, for whatever reason, they go into it, select all the polygons, and hit delete on that, and leave the actual object there. It's not too difficult to find. You just go to the File menu in Max and down to Summary Info. This will give you a list of all the different objects you have in Max, as well as their vertex and polygon count. You just look for the ones that have 0 vertices and 0 faces. And that'll help you track down the problem object really, really fast. A third problem that you might come across is that sometimes if you instance an object and then you apply material to another instance of that object, you'll get this problem where the material that was on the first instance of the object will show up on all other instances of that object. So the way to fix this is in Max, just make each of those unique, and that way when you export, it won't think that they're the same object, just instanced, and it'll be able to display the materials correctly. One last thing I want to mention before I finish this tutorial that's actually not on this slide is that if you ever want something to show up two-sided in Vizard, meaning that the texture on one side of the polygon will also show on the back side of the polygon, normally they're invisible, all you got to do is go to the material editor and go to the material for that object and check the two-sided box within shader basic parameters, and this will let it show. Okay, so that's the end of this tutorial for exporting from 3ds Max into Vizard. I hope you found this useful.